You guys ready?
Yeah.
Okay. You can start. I'm gonna give a demo on decaling, and there's a couple things you need. You need water, obviously, because they're water slide decals. You need a piece of paper towel, scissors to cut the decals, your choice of setting solution. I've got both Microsol and Tamiya Mark Fit here, a small brush to apply it, and a small knife. That is not part. Okay. So everybody, when you read about decals, everybody says use warm water. I have found it really doesn't make that much difference. It makes the decals come off the paper faster, but they still work fine no matter how warm or cold it is.
Question,
Yes,
any opinion on distilled versus non-distilled?
I've only ever used sink water, just straight out of the tap.
Okay.
Okay. So
I've used both in the past.
the
Really?
Yeah.
This is a card. This is a cartograph printed sheet, and obviously I've already started working on the car. This is actually a little bit of a difficult sheet to work with, but I'm gonna do a little bit of it here. So you take the scissors and you cut out the decal, and you don't have to be too precise when it's a screen printed decal. Cartograph, microscale, most kit decals. So then you just put the decal in the water and wait for it to totally soak. And one thing that's a good rule of thumb is that when the decal goes in the water, it curves. It'll curl up. When it starts to uncurl, that's when it's ready to come out of the water.
Good tip.
So,
In the olden times, I remember there was always, a little clear area around the colored portion of the decal. Are they still that way now, or is it just a big sheet and you have to do your own
well,
perimeter area?
there's different kinds.
Okay.
This is a cartograph printed. These are screen printed, so they're pretty much right, just right to size. There's a little bit of carrier film overlay, but not a whole lot. This one's already ready to come off the paper. And I wet it with my finger, and I put it on. I use the lid from there to put the thing. Then I press it down with paper towel. And the Goodyear logo over the fender, and I just messed it up. Okay. I twisted it. Okay. Goodyear logo over the fender is now done. Now that's an easy decal because it's a very smooth area. Now we're going to do a harder decal. Also a larger decal, which might be a little easier to say.
So do you prepare the surface in any special way?
Yes, you want the car to be as, or whatever you're decaling, you want it to be as glossy and smooth as possible. Some people will decal over flat surfaces. I have found that does not work well. It tends to have silvering.
Silvering,
And it also has a tendency of falling off the decal. Like when I was first starting out, I didn't know what I was doing, and I decaled. There was an old monogram kit molded in color. I decaled straight onto the bare plastic, and within a month, the decals have just literally fallen right off. So you don't really want to do that.
I know you often use large decals to cover large areas of the vehicle. You run into problems with trying to curve in two different directions?
Yes,
Okay.
this decal I'm doing now. This decal I'm doing now will have multiple curves. This car right here is entirely covered in decal except for 3 spots. The pillars between on the B-pillars, the side skirts over here, and the nose down here is painted black. Everything else is decal. All of the camo, all of the neon, even the silver on the roof, all decal.
Are they stretchy at all, or do you have to do slices, or how do you handle them curving in two directions?
That's what the Microsol is for.
Well, it melts a little bit.
A little bit, yeah. And I will actually address that a little more once this decal is ready to come off the paper. And it is now. Okay. This decal is the red and white stripes and the door number. And this goes over a complex curve here. And I've already done the left side, so I know it's a challenging decal. Okay. Get that on there. Line it up, and you can see it has to go the curve for the fender where the fender sticks out. It goes there, and it goes up and into the window frame. So it's multiple complex curves. And I will press this down with the paper towel. And it will slide around a little bit. That's no big deal. You got the time to do it. It doesn't stick right away usually. Some decals do, but most of the time they don't. And this needs a little bit of help. So take the microsol. I have been more of a microsol user over the years. It works better for me because probably I know how to use it better. And anyway, you just cover it over, cover the decal, rub it all on there with a paintbrush. This is just a standard tester's brush. There's nothing special about it. I used it because I had it. And I've been using this same brush for probably 10 years for decals. And then you just rub it on there and let it soak for a little bit. What you want to do is you want to wait for it to start to look wrinkled. When it starts to look wrinkled, then I will take the wet paper towel and I will wet it with my finger like this, just a little bit. You want it to be damp, not dripping, but you want it to not be dry because if it's dry, the decal will stick to it. So let's see, I'm kind of rushing it because I'm doing the video and I'm doing the demo, and this one actually is going on significantly better than the driver's side did. Okay. You always want to make sure if you're going to touch the decal with your finger, and you can, it's not a big deal, you want your finger to be wet. You don't want to touch it with a dry surface or any dry paper towel, dry finger, any part of your hand that touches it. And I just ripped the part off my finger because I held it too long. Okay, that's not a big deal. Slide it back into place. Good enough. Good to go. If you do it right, you won't even be able to tell that it broke. And this one is also a decal that wraps around the curve of the body into the fender. What I will do with the knife is I will make small relief cuts in there because when you wrap it around, that actually helps. And they don't have to be precise. They don't have to be any length, particularly whatever it does to work. And sometimes, like that part right there, where it has the compound curve, where it curves up the body, onto the fender, and onto the side skirt, that's a red and white stripe, to help that along a little bit, I will actually take the knife and make a little slice where the red and white meet, and that will actually help it perform better. And then I will press it down. And I don't usually talk when I'm doing this. I'm usually watching TV or listening to the radio or whatever. So I've never actually talked through doing it before. But press it down, smooth out. If there's any wrinkles or bubbles, which there are in this, you just gently wipe them to the side with the damp paper towel, and they disappear, they go out. And sometimes the decal, when it's going around, it will not want to conform. So what I will do is I will take a wet finger and just hold it there on the curve, and it will set it up. And sometimes you have to do it multiple times. Some decals, especially older decals, will break instead of curve. They'll just snap right off. And some of them will not conform to the curvature at all, and you'll end up having to just cut them off with the knife blade.
Even with the decal set, they
Yeah.
don't soften enough.
Some of them are really difficult to work with. I've used decals that were made as far back as 1975 successfully, but with decals you want to use them quickly. You don't want to let them sit around because they get brittle with age, and they will also have more trouble conforming to surfaces, and they'll also be more likely to leave silvering on the parts where there's just decal film and no color. But that part is pretty much done. I'll address that a little bit more going forward, but I just let it sit a little bit.
You should mention the spray that you use to help preserve the...
Yes, there is something called Decal Bonder. It was made by testers. It is discontinued. There are others. I haven't been able to locate them yet, but you can spray that on a decal and it will help it a lot, especially neon. Neon decals, which you're not going to really have in armor or aircraft all that often, but pretty common in NASCAR, they will shatter. They are very brittle.
Do you spray that on before you apply it or afterwards?
Before. You spray the decal, you take the paper You tape that to a piece of cardboard and then you spray it. There's also Micro Scale, the same company that makes Microsol. They make a decal,
Film,
yeah, which you can brush on. I'm not too fond of it because it'll turn a little bit brown. Okay.
Have you ever worked with, like a vintage kit where the decals have gotten all yellow? I've often seen them where they
Yes.
look terrible, all yellow.
Yes, it's best not to use them if at all possible.
Okay.
Well, to
Because-
fix yellow decals, you can stick them in the window
Yeah, I used to hear put
Right.
in the sunlight.
But I always wondered
Can-
if they
Yeah.
dry them out even further.
You can do that and it will work, but the little bit of yellowing will always be visible. Especially if you're doing a white car, you're out of luck. It's best to get another copy of the decal.
I've never been able to get it to work. Because I have a lot of the Tamiya Formula One cars from the nineties.
Yeah.
And for, at least for cars and race cars, you go to IndyCals,
Yeah.
which has, it's a company that makes, a lot of new decals for old kids. I don't know what you would do with like airplanes. Of course, airplanes have national markings.
Right.
You could probably just borrow those from another kid.
This decal sheet is a full panel. These decals, after the demo's done, you can come up and look at them closer. But these decals are just an entire sheet. These are actually printed on a laser printer, and that actually works, but it only works on white cars. If you try to put it on a non-white car, it will show the color through. It'll be terrible. Now I actually built this car already in 1/64 scale, and now I'm going to build it in 1/25 scale. And this is the AMT version, and I always use a reference photo when I'm building a replica because building NASCAR models is building replicas. So this is the driver's side door number, which I will do first. When I am building NASCAR cars, I like to do it where I do the contingencies first, then the door number, and then work my way backwards, if possible. It's not always possible due to the paint scheme, and nowadays current cars don't have contingencies too much in the front. But that's the way I like to do it because it just helps with the location and stuff.
How close do you get to the colored part on this type of decal sheet?
As close as you possibly can. These decals, when they're on the computer screen printed, not screen printed, inkjet decals, they're super thin and they will come off the paper very quickly. So I'll drop that in there. It's curved up in there. You probably can't see that, but it is curved and it's already starting to flatten out. Now I tend to not leave these in the water very long because they will have a tendency of just floating right off the paper back. And you want to avoid that. It's not the end of the world, but that's going to make it very difficult because they have a tendency of curling and wrapping in on themselves. So, make sure I'm putting on the right side number, which I am. It's not perfect, it's a little wrinkled, but that's what, I wet finger again, that's very important. And just slide it into place. Take the paper towel. And work from one side to the other or top to bottom, it doesn't matter, your personal preference, and just make sure it's smooth. Smooth it out, and it's done. And it goes very quickly, very easily.
And decal set you only use in the situation where you have compound curves. Like you wouldn't use it there.
It wouldn't be necessary.
Okay.
You could, it wouldn't hurt it, but you don't really need to.
Okay.
Now go back to this one. Make sure it's smooth.
So after these are all thoroughly dried, do you use a seal coat so they don't come off and you can post sand if needed?
It depends. I do it in 1/64 scale because they do have a tendency of coming off with your handling it because it's small. You gotta The modern NASCAR builds, yes, they are clear coated because the real cars are just one smooth wrap. The older cars, this is the 1993 season, I do not clear them. Some people, there were, back in the early 2000s, there were Alps printed decals. Alps was a printer that could print white and foil, which is very difficult to get in decal form, and those will scratch very easily. A lot of people do clear them for protection. I don't, but I also have had them get scratched because I did. So it's really personal preference, but what I'm My main focus is making sure the body is as accurate as possible, and that includes the sheen of the decals and paint as well.
I noticed that you're working with just the body.
Yes.
So you're going right to decals before you've attached the body to the chassis.
Oh, right. One thing you have to be mindful of is water drops and marks from the Microsol and MarkFit. They will leave spots on the windows, and my tap water at home is kind of it's called hard water. It will actually leave spots in the paint. So when I'm done with the decal session, I will dry the car with a paper towel, just to make sure there's no spots of water on it. And you don't really want to get that on the windows. The modern NASCAR cars include the window markings on the decal sheet, and that obviously requires decaling the windows. And you got to be really careful with them that you don't leave any liquid on them, or else it will stain it. And you can get them off, but sometimes it's a little bit of a challenge. In fact, when I did the left side of this, I left a little bit on the car, and it left a little mark, which luckily it will be covered by a decal, so it doesn't matter. Okay.
If you work with the distilled water, that's the reason they recommend it. It doesn't leave the hard water spots.
Yeah, I figure that's probably the case, but for me, it's just
No, I agree with you. I finally, a year or two ago, I bought a bottle of distilled water at the supermarket.
oh yeah.
Gallon jug. It's,
This is a long decal. This is the grill for the Kyle Busch car. So that one, will it do it? Yes. It curves up that much in the water. And just leave it there. And eventually when, like I said before, when it starts to uncurl, it's ready to go. And let's see. Getting the decals to go into the small areas that are indented, that's when you want to use Microsol or MarkFit or whatever you choose. Because there are other brands out there. These are just the two that I have. I know there's a Salvaset is fairly well known. I've never used it. I've heard that's actually very hot and will melt the decals if you touch them. I can't speak to that, yes or no, because I've never used it. But after the demo, you can come look and see their decals are down into the vents on the hood. They're into the roof flaps and the roof hatch for the driver to escape out of if the car flips over. That's actually very difficult to do. Doing this car, the Bass Pro car, took me 4 days because I would do a part and let it dry and then do another part, etc. until it was done. And it took 4 sessions over 4 days, but a period of probably about 10 to 12 hours to decal that one car.
See, that's why I do all mine. 3 serial numbers if you're lucky. You're done.
Roger, how do you do aircraft? Do you gloss coat the aircraft before decals?
depends on the mood and what I'm working on. I always, just mentally, I always had the problem of, I'm doing a flat aircraft, I hate to make it glossy and then have to flatten it again. So.
The grill is done. That went on pretty easily, actually. So
Usually with like the roundels or the national markings, I can cut all the clear film away from the decal, and then you can put it on the flat surface, and then use a decal softener to get it to really sit down. It'll actually adhere to the bump, the flat surface.
So you can use the decal set even like 3 days from now, you notice something, you can apply it even then.
yes, as long as you have not clear coated it, you can
Right,
still apply
sure.
it. What I just did while Roger was speaking, there were a couple bits of silvering showing through in the clear decal film between the number and the stripe. I took my hobby knife and I just poked a little hole in them and applied Microsol, and that fixed them.
Right underneath the decal.
Right. You get air bubbles sometimes. You just got to get out. So that's pretty much all there is to it, and it's like anything in modeling. No matter how complex or how simple it is, you just take it one piece at a time. I generally will work on multiple cars at one time, so while I'll do like one side, and then while the side is drying, I'll work on the other car. While the side of that one is drying, I'll go back to the other one, do the other side, and it works out well. When I'm doing the 1/64 scale cars, I tend to work on 4 cars at a time decaling. And I noticed that I got the numbers a little crooked. Now let's see if I can fix them or if I have to buy another decal seat.
Paul, do you gloss code where the decal goes on the armor?
If it's just a small like serial number or something like that, I generally don't bother. I put on a satin varnish over the top of it, and then I sand it back, and it generally gets away from the silvering.
One other tip, if you put on a decal in the wrong place or you put on the wrong decal or whatever, if you want to remove it, piece of tape. As long as it hasn't been clear coated, any tape, masking tape, scotch tape, it works. Just stick it on, pull it off. I found out once by put on the thing upside down, it was a car number 0, so it was supposed to be tipped, I put it on wrong. I ordered another set of decals, pulled it off with tape and redid it. So that about covers the basics. Any questions?
After all, while you were speaking, nice job.